Welcome back to the C.T.W podcast. I'm your host, Duranquez Wynn, and I thank you guys for tuning in again. It has been a minute since I have done long form content, but this is something that I've been feeling like needs to be talked about, especially today. And that is knowing how to set healthy boundaries. I think where we are now, boundaries are looked at as a negative thing. Boundaries are looked at as a form of punishment. In all actuality, boundaries are a form of protection. Boundaries are a form of love. But if you don't have the right perception, if you have not been taught correctly about boundaries, you will look at boundaries as a negative thing. And this is something that I had to learn in my walk with God, in becoming healthy, becoming whole, relearning certain things, rewiring my brain on how to set healthy boundaries. And it's not easy. It's not easy to set boundaries with your family or friends or your boss or whatever the situation or circumstance may be. Setting boundaries is something that is right, but feels so bad when you do it. And so the thing that I think people struggle with when it comes to boundaries is the emotions that get attached with it. And I think we need to understand that you advocating for yourself is not an attack on the other person. And the person that takes you advocating for yourself as an attack on them, that is something that they need to deal with personally. That is not something that you should bear the weight or the burden of because you set a boundary for yourself. It is important to be able to realize and recognize and be honest with yourself when you are tapped out, when you are focused on something else, when you are pursuing something that is going to require more of your attention, when you're not willing to lower your standard on a certain level because you're trying to obtain something. It is important to understand that none of that is wrong. But the way that society has abused being selfish and making you feel as if though you setting a boundary for yourself and you choosing yourself, it is used in a form of making you feel as if though you are selfish. And if you aren't careful, when you are choosing yourself over helping a family member, when you're choosing yourself over helping a friend, and they call you selfish, or they say you never help them, or they start to say things that degrade you or label your character, you need to be careful about that, because that can cross over into manipulation or trying to make you feel guilty for not helping them. And so I think understanding when it comes to setting boundaries, I want to free you from the guilt and the burden that comes with saying no. I want to free you from the mental pressure, the mental prison, and the anxiety and the pressure that comes with choosing yourself. And I'm not just talking about single people. I'm not just talking about family. I'm not just talking about friends. I'm also talking about people that are married. It is perfectly okay to have boundaries in a marriage, because you setting boundaries in a marriage shows your love for yourself. You setting boundaries in a friend group, you setting boundaries with your family. It is not an attack on them. It is you advocating for yourself, and it is showing where you have standards, you have morals, you have values and ethics that you are not willing to break, because if you do, then you will not be able to operate, you will not be able to do, you will not be able to be as valuable to them if you do not set these boundaries for yourself. And anyone who degrades you, talks bad about you, or makes you tries to make you feel bad about setting those particular boundaries, they may not be for you. Now, you need to understand that and be aware of that everybody will not understand being able to set boundaries. Some people will take it as an attack on them. Some people will take it as you don't care about them. Some people will become hurt because they will project what they would do for you onto you and think that you would do the same thing. And it's not that you would not do the same thing. It's that maybe you are in a season of your life where your focus has shifted. Your focus is required somewhere else. And all of the attention and all of the focus that you are putting into whatever you're doing, you don't have much outside of that. Maybe you've gone back to school. Maybe you've just had a kid. Maybe you've gotten a new job and it requires more time at work. Maybe you're going through a health crisis. Maybe you're just going through your own internal growth process. And it requires a lot of attention from you. And you are not willing, or you're not able to place energy in places that is going to take away from your process. And I think it's important to understand and to be able to have people in your circle, family, friends, spouse, whatever, to understand and to be able to show grace and mercy during those seasons. Because it is important to understand that we all go through things differently, and we go through things at different times in different seasons of life. So it's not that they will never go through a season where they need their time. It's when they go through their season, did they act in a way that you would want them, did they act in a way that they would want you to act when they're going through their season? And a lot of times people don't necessarily reciprocate the energy or the character or the attributes that they are going to need or want in a particular season, because they are blinded by their selfish ambitions. They're blinded by the things that they want. They're blinded by only what is going to meet their goals and their needs. And while that is okay, because we all have that at particular times in life, it is still important for the person that they are pulling on, the person that they are asking for help or advice or whatever the situation or circumstance may be, for them to take a step back and see, do I have the capacity? Do I have the energy? Do I have the mental fortitude? Do I have it right now to be able to help them, to be able to give advice? Do I have it right now to be able to do this on top of what I'm already doing? And if the answer is no, then let the answer be no. You do not owe anyone an explanation for your answer. I know it feels like the right thing to do. And I'm not saying just say no and be rude and mean. I'm saying be able to be okay with saying no and not feeling pressured or anxious or obligated to explain your answer. People that are close to me and know me, I have no issue with saying no and then leaving it at that. And to some people, it seems as if though that is very rude and very blunt and very curt. And it can be at times, but also I love them enough not to give them the runaround when it comes to certain situations and circumstances. So if somebody may ask me, hey, do you want to help with this? And I'll check in with myself to see, do I have the ability? Do I have the capacity? Do I have the mental fortitude? Am I able to do this to the best of my ability? Because if I'm not able to do it to the best of my ability, then I don't want to show up. Because a lot of times we have gotten used to, or we will do something even if we aren't our best, just because we feel guilty or we'll feel bad for saying no. And what that does is that it leaves us in a deficit. It prevents us from actually being the best version of ourselves. It prevents us from actually growing. It prevents us from actually being able to display the gifts, the talents, the character, everything that we possess on the inside of us, because we're tired, because we were too afraid. We're too anxious. We don't want to disappoint anybody. We're too afraid to say no in certain situations or circumstances. We will show up to a job. We will show up to a party. We will show up to a family event, knowing that we don't have that much energy. And then when something happens or things start to happen and we start to get frustrated and agitated, and now it is causing you to act out of character or act in a way that you normally would not act if you would have taken the time to care for yourself. If you would have set the boundary and said no, excuse me, if you would have set the boundary and said no and say, you know what, I'm going to choose rest over going out with the girls. I'm going to choose rest instead of going to play golf with the guys. I'm going to choose rest instead of running around and trying to make a little extra money. I'm going to choose taking care of myself, prioritizing me instead of pouring into everyone else. There are some times in some seasons of life where some of you who may watch this need to stop picking up the phone. You need to stop allowing people to run to you to dump all their problems on you. And every time you need someone to talk to, or you're going through something in life, you can't seem to find anybody. There are some of you who are constantly allowing people to dump all of their stress, all of their emotions, all of their pain, all of their trauma, all of the stuff they're going through in their marriage, at work. You allow those people to call you and to dump all of that stuff on you. And when you are stressed out, trying to figure out why you can't get peace, why you can't figure out joy, why you can't sleep at night, and it's because you're carrying your stuff as well as their stuff. I want to give you a verse in the Bible that will help, or can help you understand why you should allow people to deal with their own stuff in certain seasons of life. And it's Galatians 6:5. I have it memorized, but I want to actually give it to you. It says this. It says, for every person will have to bear with patience his own burdens of faults and shortcomings for which he is alone responsible for. And so Galatians 6:5, that verse is literally telling us, it says each person is responsible for carrying their own weight. And so you have to take a step back and realize and recognize, is this something that you need to help them with? Or is this something that they need to deal with on their own? And I just need to be a listening ear. Or this is something they need to deal with on their own, and I just need to let them handle it. It is not that you don't love them. It is not that you want to see them struggle. You want to see them go through trial and tribulation. You want to see them hurt. It's not that. It's not taking from them the transformation and the elevation and the growth that will come from allowing them to go through their own stuff. I know it's hard when you love somebody, you care for somebody, and you don't want them to suffer. You don't want them to go through hard times, because during that time, you remember, if only you would have had somebody to help you during your hard times. If only you would have had somebody help you when you were crying or struggling or going through X, Y, and Z. And I'm not saying this to say be harsh and be rude and just X them completely out and set a boundary that you can't listen to them. I am saying be wise in the things that you take in from your friends, from your family, from work, from anything. Be very wise from the things that you take in, even things that you hear on social media, TV. Be very wise at the things that you hear, because what will happen is that you're trying to develop peace. You're trying to develop joy. You're trying to clear your mind. You're trying to grow. You're trying to develop in certain areas. And when you're taking on other people's stuff, it is hard for you to remain focused, because if you care for somebody, when you love somebody, when you're close to somebody, their stuff will become your stuff, regardless if you want it to or not. Sometimes somebody else's decisions will impact your life, whether you like it or not. When you love and care for people, their decisions will impact your life. And this is why Paul was saying in, I think it's 1 Corinthians 6 and 14, 2 Corinthians 6 and 14, where he was saying, don't be unequally yoked. Yeah, 2 Corinthians 6 and 14. It says, do not be unequally bound together with unbelievers. Do not make mismatch alliances with them, inconsistent with your faith. For what partnership can righteousness have with lawlessness? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness? And so a simple representation of what that means is, when it says do not be unequally yoked, it is saying do not be with somebody that cannot carry their own weight. I am not talking about someone who is a weaker vessel. I am saying do not be with someone who cannot physically carry, or who is not choosing to carry the responsibility that God has given them to steward, or who is neglecting the responsibility that God has given them to steward. Because that's going to look differently. That's going to look different to all of us, because in Matthew 25, the story of the talents, God gives to all of us what we can handle. So if we need to be careful about the things that we take on. We need to be careful about the people that we decide to take stuff from, because once you get in a friend group, once you are a part of a family, once you are married, and you may be a part of a family, and you may be the one that is called to break generational curses. So what happens is, because your family are and is the people that you don't really choose, you are kind of obligated. Well, you feel kind of obligated that you're stuck with them. And so with your family, it is easy to pick up the weight and the stress of things that they dropped along the way in their journey of life. They had the same opportunities and responsibilities to be able to break the generational curse over the family. But what happened was things got too hard. They decided to neglect the responsibility. They decided to neglect the weight. They decided to go and do things their own way, because maybe what God promised them wasn't coming fast enough. When you're a part of a friend group, it is, and you've been friends for when you've been friends for a certain amount of time, you feel like it's your responsibility to help them, because you guys have time in the game. You guys have developed this relationship. And if you are a part of a friend group that is not willing to bear the weight, or is neglecting the responsibility that they are given, it is okay to set boundaries. It is okay to let them know, hey, this is nothing against you. This is nothing against our friendship. But I see that you are not properly handling the responsibilities of the things that you need to take care of. Or I see that you are choosing to neglect the responsibilities that God gave you, the responsibilities that you are entrusted with. So I have to set a boundary so that those habits and characteristic traits don't rub off on me. And most of the time, people will stay in a friendship, will stay connected to a family and stay close to a family that are where those things are being experienced because they do not have enough courage. They do not have enough love for themselves to be able to set that boundary because they were told or they learned or they feel as if though it's not right to set boundaries for people that you love. An example of the friendship and not wanting their particular character to rub off on us is in Acts 15. And it's talking about Paul. And I'm going to read it to you and then I'll explain it. So what it's talking about in Acts 15 is that it's talking about Paul was released to do go on a second missionary journey. And this is what it says. It says, after some time, Paul said to Barnabas, let us go back and visit the brothers and sisters, believers in every city where we preach the message of the Lord and see how they are doing. Now, Barnabas wanted to take his cousin John, who was called Mark, along with him. Now, listen to this. It says, but Paul kept insisting that they should not take along with them the one who had quit and deserted them in Pamphylia and had not gone on with them to the work. And so talking about friends who are not taking responsibility or choosing to neglect their responsibilities, the reason that it's okay or the reason that it's important to set that boundary is because here Paul kept insisting to Barnabas that he did not want Mark to go with them because Mark displayed certain characters in a previous mission and Paul did not trust him from what he did for the previous mission. He abandoned him. He quit on the mission, on the first mission. So Paul said, you know what? I don't want to be attached to someone. I don't want to be friends with someone who has displayed this type of character. And so it is okay for you to set that boundary. And I'll continue to read. It says, and it became such a sharp disagreement that they separated from one another. And Barnabas took John Mark with him and sailed away to Cyprus. And so sometimes when you decide to mention or when you decide to set that boundary, it's not going to be okay to that person because they're going to take it as a personal attack on them. And while that is not what your intentions are, you are not responsible for how someone receives a thing. You are only responsible for the way you explain a thing and the way that you receive a thing. And so being able to set a boundary with family and friends and being able to set a boundary with work and being able to set a boundary in seasons of your life is not a negative thing. Being able to set a boundary against somebody, being able to set a boundary against your spouse, being able to set a boundary is not a form of punishment. It is a form of protection for the relationship. It is to say, I love and I respect this relationship enough. I like this relationship enough. I want to have this relationship enough that in order for it to properly work for both of us, things need to be set in place. Things need to have an order in order for this to work. Because if there is no order and there are not boundaries set, what will happen is that things will start to dysfunction. People will start to feel like they're being taken for granted. Bitterness starts to enter it. Division starts to happen. Minds start to wander. Now there is discord. Now things are going all over the place. And so I think where we are and with social media, and it is okay now to disregard modesty and morals and it's okay to do certain things as long as you're not hurting anybody else, we have missed the mark on being able to love ourselves. We have missed the mark on healthy boundaries. We have missed the mark on healthy friendships, healthy relationships with family, healthy marriages. We are missing the mark when it comes to being able to set boundaries, because we have been taught, or we perceive boundaries as such a negative thing. We perceive them as something that is an attack on us, as an attack on the person, as a way of saying, hey, the only reason that you're setting boundaries on me is because you don't really trust me, or you don't really like me. When in reality, the reason to set boundaries is because I do trust you, because I do love you, because I want us to work, because I want this relationship to be cool, because I want to be your friend, because I want the marriage to work, because I want to continue to be in this family. I have to set these boundaries so that the things you are doing does not cause you or us to get further and further away from each other. So I'm going to set this boundary so that we can continue to remain in covenant and not separate from each other. In what I just read, it says, and it became such a sharp disagreement that they separated from one another, and Barnabas took John Mark with him and sailed to Cyprus. So it is possible when you don't set boundaries. It is possible when you don't set boundaries that it can cause further division. It's possible when you do set boundaries, it can cause further division. But the right boundary for the right person will not be an issue. And so going forward, I hope this video helped you guys. I'm probably going to make another part to this because I think being able to set healthy boundaries is important. But I need you to go back and rethink some of the quote unquote healthy things you think you're doing, the healthy boundaries you think you're doing, because you could think that you're helping your family. You could think that you're helping your friends. You could think you're helping the marriage by just giving them what they want and not holding off. But it's important to understand that in order for certain things to work, there needs to be parameters and stipulations in place so that things will not get chaotic. And I'll leave you with this last verse. And it's Proverbs 8:29. And I'll end here. And this is talking about God. And it says, when he set for the seas its boundaries so that the water would not transgress the boundaries set by his command, when he marked out the foundation of the earth. And it's saying that when God set the boundary for the sea, he set it so that the water would not come on land. The reason that he said that is so that there will be a barrier. So because if the water gets over on the other side of that barrier, then there's going to be chaos. And so go back and rethink your relationships and see where you need to set a healthy boundary. I hope this helps. Peace.